So today we've finally been given a rundown about MotoGP 23's career mode by Milestone, and to be honest, there is a lot more to this than I thought there would be, and I know I need to get into it. It sounds like it's going to be a big departure from what we've had previously, but we'll get into it. So Stefano Zanaboni, you might remember him from the Q&As that I did videos on before. If you haven't seen those, I'll leave links to them in the description. But he's basically given us a really good in-depth explanation of how the career mode's going to work and all the different features. So I've got, hello riders, I'm Stefano Zanaboni, lead game designer of MotoGP 23. This new chapter in the franchise is special for several reasons, and among them, there's hard work put into the new renewed career. I think it better embodies the essence of MotoGP 23 as a game for everyone, together with a neural aid system whose advanced and fine-tuned AI support system will help beginners to learn the ropes of driving. Let's see what I'm talking about. So of course that's a little intro that he's done, but the next section we've got debut season. Approachable, emergent, dynamic. These three words perfectly summarise the overall experience from the beginning of the career to the end. You will start from the final part of a Moto3 championship as a newcomer, the rookie who will forge his own path throughout the entire MotoGP world. We chose to set this as your starting point because by driving simpler bikes to master compared to the MotoGP ones, you'll be able to get familiar with the new mechanics of this edition. The debut season will decide your future. You can either stay in Moto3 if your performance doesn't live up to expectations, move up to Moto2 if you do well enough, or even go big and be called to race in MotoGP. It's up to you. As a completionist, you might want to challenge every possible rival in every category. If you're eager to race side by side with MotoGP legends instead, then you have to work hard at it and prove your worth. So this was something we were, of course, wondering about previously. I do remember someone specifically asking in the comments section, so I hope they are watching this video. If you are watching, then yes, you can still do a full Moto3 season. You just have to do the end of the previous one first, and then you can get into a new full season. Now, I hope, to be honest, that you get put in the end of the 2022 season, so then you can go into the 2023 season if you do stay in that class, but I doubt it. You probably will just get put straight into the 2023 Moto3 season. Then yes, you can still do a Moto3 season, it seems. It just means you get put in at the end of it. I really hope you get put into the end of the 2022 Moto3 season, but I really doubt it. I doubt it. You'll probably just get put straight into the 2023 Moto2 season, but it'd be really good if you got it put into last year's, did the last couple of rounds as a wild card or something, and then obviously you can decide whether you can go into Moto3, Moto2 or MotoGP. Obviously it's a little bit unrealistic because it doesn't matter how well you did in those rounds, you're not going up to Moto2 or MotoGP. Maybe a lower Moto2 team could take a punt on you, but if you're just doing a couple of rounds at the end of a Moto3 season, you'll probably get signed by a high-performing Moto3 team if you won all those. I mean, I suppose if you won every round, maybe you would get fast-tracked up to Moto2, but I don't think they'd be able to call you up to MotoGP. You wouldn't be old enough, probably. Of course, it is a game, so they've got to be a little bit more loose with it. But it does seem like you can still do a whole season in Moto3, which is great, because I know some people were a little bit worried about that. So moving on to the next section, then we've got turning points. Once your debut season ends, well, this is where the real fun begins. Every choice matters. That's why we decided to add the so-called turning points until the very end of the career. They are key decision-making moments in the game that affect your career throughout every single chapter. While you can see a chapter as the big picture with the mid to long-term objective to complete, turning points are the main beats that forge your entire path and determine a variety of scenarios you could find yourselves in. Don't underestimate them, because even though the main turning points will show up at the end of each chapter, every decision you make during the career counts and can lead to a different outcome. The bike you choose to ride, the power-ups you want to implement on it, how you behave with other riders through social interactions, step by step, chapter by chapter, the choices you make will shape you as a rider in one way or another. The career can be very different for every player because of these decisions. Then you can see we've got a little picture here, so it's telling you whether move to a new team or renew with your current team. So that's actually quite cool because this menu looks just more impressive. Like before, obviously it was a 2D flat menu, but now you can literally see either side. You can see the current team you're with, then there's another bike obviously with a blanket over it, because it could be obviously any bike that you could move to. So it's a bit more of a decision, where in the past you just signed contracts. It actually does seem like, it does feel like more of a decision rather than just signing with another team. But it does carry on here, so we've got, let's make an example by using the debut season. As I said, it's a common prologue for all players, a very brief chapter in which you're tasked to finish ahead of Ryosai Yamanaka within the penultimate GP of the season. If you're successful, the game offers you a specific turning point. Challenge the Moto3 World Champion Diogo Moreira and beat him. By doing so, you will earn the attention of MotoGP teams. Your results speak for themselves. You are a promising rider worthy of the MotoGP category, so from the Moto3 you can jump directly into MotoGP. Race side by side with the bests and try to be the next world champion. But what happens if you can't beat Yamanaka first? You still don't have what it takes to be promoted to MotoGP, but your efforts have been acknowledged nonetheless. Thus, the game will give you a similar turning point as before, but not against Diogo Moreira. The challenge will be simpler, and if you win it, you'll get a chance to pass to the Moto2 category. You didn't go big, but you still made a step forward in your climb to the top. This is your very first turning point, and throughout the career, you'll experience different ones, each with equally different results. So there we go then, we actually do know now what's going to happen in this debut season, whether the riders are the exact ones. Obviously, they've decided already that Moreira's winning this year, so, you know, let's see whether Milestone end up being right. I think Moreira probably was just leading the championship when they probably got to that point in development, and of course, he could very well win the championship this year, but they seem to have decided already that he is winning it. But if you manage to beat Yamanaka, you do obviously then go on to face Moreira, but if you fail to beat Yamanaka, you then get the chance to try and get into Moto2. But to be honest, if you're not beating Yamanaka, you're not getting into Moto2. You're not getting straight onto Moto2 unless you wipe the floor with everybody. So yeah, it has been interesting. Of course, again, it is a game, but they've been going on about these turning points for a long time, and they've not really said a lot about it. They've been very cagey, but here we go. We finally have a good example of one. So, you know, a turning point could be, do you renew with your current team or do you move to another one? Or you need to beat Ryusai Yamanaka, and then we'll give you another challenge. If you beat Ryusai Yamanaka, you then need to beat Diogo Moreira. And if you beat both of them, you get a MotoGP seat. If you only beat Yamanaka, you might get a Moto2 seat. I guess if you fail to beat Yamanaka, you'll have to beat someone like Aji or, you know, someone a bit further down the order. Then if you beat them, maybe you'll get into Moto2. Maybe if you fail to beat them, you'll stay in Moto3. So it does sound like quite an interesting prospect, and it's good that it's now been explained, because obviously before it was a little bit confusing because they weren't obviously talking too much about it, because obviously they were sort of keeping this up their sleeve. But we'll move on to the next section now. Another thing that they've been talking about a lot but sort of haven't said much about is the social interactions. They basically just said, if you're nice to someone, they won't ram you off. If you're horrible to someone, they will ram you off, effectively. You know, they said that they don't want to be more aggressive, so we might get a bit more of an in-depth look here. So you notice that I mentioned social interactions. Yes, we wanted not only for the game to be emergent and dynamic, but also to add a sense of responsibility. Social interactions couldn't be a more modern topic. What you say, how you say it, and how you behave have consequences. This happens in MotoGP 23 too, because rivalries can arise precisely from how you behave towards other riders. Are you the sassy type? Then expect your on-track rivals to be more aggressive, trying to outdo you and conquer the first position at any cost. On the contrary, being more accommodating gives you some space during races. But remember that the other riders are there to compete. They won't be too aggressive, but will still try to outperform you and win. These are what we call short-term consequences. There will also be long-term consequences determined by your reputation, which, in turn, depends on your social interactions. Having a bad reputation means it'll be difficult for you to be hired by a specific manufacturer. On the other hand, having a good reputation can lead you to receive a bit of a discount when you want to join a manufacturer. Since you need a certain amount of reputation to join a manufacturer, being nice could be a good idea. And again, we've got another little screenshot here. So we've got a few different riders. We've got Alex Marquez, we've got Jorge Martin, we've got Morbidelli, Bagnaia, Marini, Aleix Espargaro, Zarco, Vinales. So we've got obviously all those riders sort of around our rider. And it says on the right hand side here, we've got a relationship with the teams. Check the status required to race in various teams and contract offers available. So obviously you can see we've got a bit of an evil looking face, a sad face, a sort of meh okay face, a slightly happy face, and a really happy face. And we can see here that we've got a pretty decent relationship with Alex Marquez, I guess because he's our teammate. We've got kind of meh with Vinales, Zarco, Espargaro, Bagnaia, and Martin. Then you can see here we've got Morbidelli. Obviously we've got a sad face for him and for Marini as well. So clearly we've had some sort of incidents or spats with Morbidelli and Marini. And by the looks of it, that means there's less chance of us being signed by Yamaha or Munival 46. So that is quite interesting, actually. That is really, really interesting. But there is still some more underneath this, so we'll carry on with that. But it's cool to have a look at the little pictures as they show up. In terms of dynamicism, having a good reputation is crucial, as it affects not only the way other riders react, but also the goals assigned to the player by the team. And beware, failing to achieve them could lead you to dismissal at the end of the season. This is only the surface of where social interactions could lead you, but I'm sure I gave you an idea of how it works. Along with turning points, they keep the storytelling dynamic, fluid, and full of surprises. Our goal with MotoGP 23's emerging career is to shift players' focus from being a team manager to a rider, in order to give you a different point of view compared to the past. So I must say, it seems like a good system, seems like an interesting system, because I kind of expected it to be a bit more maybe behind the scenes, like maybe you'd have just a bit of a spat with someone on social media, and then you'd kind of be expected to figure out that they were a bit annoyed at you about it, or they might just like put a message saying, oh, we'll watch you back in the next race or something like that. But it does seem like it probably does run a bit deeper than that, because of course previously what we've been told in all of the Q&As is that, oh, a rider might be more aggressive with you, a rider might be less aggressive with you, but it seems like actually if you annoy a rider, you can also annoy teams, so you can actually get a team's backup. So let's use a bit of an infamous example here, right? Whilst Rossi was at Yamaha, Marc Marquez was never signing for Yamaha because Rossi would have had this, well, he'd have been off the scale with the Marquez relationship, wouldn't he? He would have had this really red face and he wouldn't have been very happy, so Marquez was never going to factory Yamaha. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, go to that really smiley face, Maverick Vinales gets a job at Aprilia, thanks in part to being friends with Aleix. Aleix, you know, was telling Aprilia that Vinales was good and to sign him and all these different things. So yeah, the system's definitely a bit more in-depth than I first thought. So on to the next section, emerging dynamics. They've been saying this quite a bit throughout this article, so it'll be interesting to see what is in this section. But that's not all. To add more realism, there are now only 2 spots available in each manufacturer. To prove your worth and secure one of these spots, you must compete with the official riders and take their place. For example, to become a teammate at Ducati, you must first prove yourself at a satellite team like Team Gresini or Pramac Racing or VR46 Racing. If you want to switch manufacturer, you still have to catch their attention and demonstrate your value to them. However, keep in mind that even if you're a legend in MotoGP, not every team will be interested in signing you. As I mentioned before, your relationship with a specific manufacturer, which is influenced by your interactions with its riders, will determine how challenging it will be to secure a contract with them. Another example of emerging dynamics is that of newly entered teams like Gas Factory Racing setting achievable goals to enter the top 15. If you manage to get in the top 10 before the summer break, a turning point is proposed where you can earn the same bike development as KTM's official team, provided you continue to perform well in the next races. Regarding the bike development, in every team there are only 2 individuals responsible for developing the bike, the first rider and the leader manufacturer. As a second rider, you'll rely on their decisions at least until you can surpass them and take their positions, becoming the first rider, and eventually the leader manufacturer will be among your goals. So probably the most interesting thing about that is that you can only have 2 riders in the team now. That's something that a lot of people have wanted for a long time. Obviously, it's been constantly pretty unrealistic that you've been able to have sort of 3 riders in the teams. Like if you signed to Gresini, Ducati, you'd be alongside Di Giannantonio and I guess Bastianini if you're talking about MotoGP 22. And then also with this manufacturer, obviously it works quite differently. So now you'll sign for a lower down team, like, well, not a lower down team, but an independent team. You're not going straight into a factory team. Although, to be fair, that didn't really happen anyway. You didn't used to get the offers for that unless you'd done very well. But let's say you move in with Gresini in this current game, and you did really well. You might get an offer from Ducati, but it's completely unrelated. It's just because you've now surpassed their reputation. Whereas in this game, if you do well on a Gresini Ducati, you actually will just get promoted through the Ducati system. So you might get promoted to Pramac, or you might get promoted to the factory team. So actually, being loyal is worth it, whereas in the previous games it didn't matter. You could be in a satellite Yamaha team and jump straight to like a factory Ducati, factory Aprilia, just because you'd reached the reputation threshold. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the team. So that's pretty interesting. And of course, we've got a little picture here, shows you that Bagnaia is the leader of Ducati, shows you that Bagnaia has a positive opinion of you, he respects you on and off the track. So that's going to help you out. You can see the compatibility with the teams. You've got medium for obviously Prima Pramac and Ducati Lenovo. You've got high for Mooney VR46. Very high for VR46, and then high for Gresini Racing. So I'm looking forward to this. This is definitely improving, but again, of course, there is still some more. I'll stop each time there is a picture just to have a little look at them. But that's obviously the first part. So let's delve deeper into this with another example. You're part of Team Gresini as the second rider. You're faced with a choice between 2 bikes, Type A and Type B. They're different, but nobody asked you if you wanted one area of the bike to be developed more than the others. As a second rider, you can only choose a bike that others supervise for you in terms of development. That's why you need to become the first rider to supervise at least one bike's development. Then you will have the opportunity to customise your bike according to your preferences, as long as you have the necessary development packs, which you earn race by race. Being a first rider is good for sure, but we all know that there's ultimately only one seat we want, the seat of the leader manufacturer, none other than Pecco Bagnaia. Being a leader manufacturer means that you can supervise both Type A and Type B bikes. Climbing the internal hierarchies and taking charge in the team's technical development during tests is another turning point the game offers. In the manufacturer's hierarchical structure, you can be the second or first rider, but the ultimate goal is to become the leader manufacturer and have the authority to make decisions regarding both bikes. You might want Type A to be more powerful and Type B to have a better chassis because you've heard that Yamaha is one step ahead on this, and that's not good for you. Keeping an eye on other teams becomes crucial in your quest for success. So we've got another little picture here then. So we've got bike development, and now this is probably where the biggest feature is being shown off. Look on the right hand side, we've got team comparative. these are all the different teams and their development points. You could actually have the teams develop now. So the AI teams will also develop for you. You seem to have development packs here as well, which, if you remember back in the day, was an old feature that we did used to have. So you'd get a development pack for doing a practice program, development pack for getting a certain position in the race. It wasn't like earning the R&D points and distributing the sort of the people across the factory. It was just about getting this position, then you can just choose an upgrade. And I guess if you're the lead rider, that's what you can do. So we've got bike statistics here as well. Engine power 6, control fuel delivery 4, stability 5, handling 1, aerodynamic load 4, aerodynamic penetration 8, electronics development 4. We've got tyre wear medium, fuel consumption high. And you can see that these on the left hand side of the screen as well, it's talking about the development packs that you've got. You've got 4 development packs. It tells you that they'll be applied at the next test, which is Portimao. Also tells us about our relationship with the other Ducati riders, which is neutral. Then there is some more text below that we will have another look at here. So I'm sure you figured it out by now. The technical development also applies to AI managed teams, whose bikes start with basic parameters and progress as technical development advances. This progression can lead to unpredictable consequences for the classifications each season. Opponents will now change their performances every time, depending on the bikes they're racing with and how they fared in the previous season. These changes will impact the hierarchies within their teams, resulting in each season being different from the others. There's a lot to keep an eye on during your career, so be sure not to rest on your laurels. So of course we've just been talking about how the AI can now upgrade their bikes, but it seems like the whole system is in place for the AI behind the scenes. So it's not just like the AI will just get given upgrades every so often. It seems like, let's say Marc Marquez is obviously the lead manufacturer rider at the moment in Repsol Honda, but if Mir keeps outperforming him in the career mode, Mir will become the lead manufacturer and he will take it in a different direction. Now, I'm sure the AI will just always pick the same kind of thing. They'll just develop the bike, but it seems like a very in-depth system. Like, I've come into this very surprised. Like, I was expecting everything to be a bit surface level. Obviously, this whole AI performance thing, we didn't know about this before, the AI managed teams upgrading. That was something that we hadn't been told about before. We didn't know much about the turning points. They hadn't told us much about those. They told us a little bit how they worked, like you'd be given an objective to try and rise up through the ranks. To be fair, we did kind of know a little bit how this development system was going to work, that you'd have to sort of become the lead rider, the manufacturer, but it really does seem like really in-depth. So I'm leaning towards the theory now that MotoGP 22 was a filler game whilst they were working on the features for this game, MotoGP 23. I think that's why MotoGP 22 was so poor. I don't think it had a lot of development time on it. I think they added the ride-out device. That was pretty much it. They added 9 seasons in 2009, but I feel like, again, that was just something that was always going on in the background, and that just get whacked in whichever game it was done for, because of course they already had the code to have historical events, so again, it wasn't too bad. This really seems like a complete overhaul of the career mode. I didn't expect anything this big, you know, when they said they were changing the career mode. I really didn't, so I am really, really surprised. We'll just read this last little paragraph here, and then I'll just sort of sum up everything from here. So, a different approach. To sum it up, MotoGP 23 offers you the opportunity to pursue a more vertical approach by climbing the internal hierarchies within a single manufacturer, allowing you to customize both of the bikes. Alternatively, you can opt for a horizontal approach by transitioning from team to team. The choice is yours. There's no single path to becoming a MotoGP legend. Despite starting from a common point such as debut season, each player's journey can be entirely unique. This diversity was our goal during the game's development, and we can't wait to see how you'll forge your own path. See you on track on June 8th on PC and consoles. So that's the entire article. I've read through everything that they have got here. So let's just talk about a little bit. Obviously, I've been talking about everything as we've gone through. So basically, just to sum up everything we now know that you can do a full Moto 3 season. That was something that people did want to know. So that's good to know. If you want to do full Moto 3 season, you can choose to do that. Turning points, well, we probably haven't learned a massive amount about turning points, to be fair, because we kind of already knew that it would be sort of all about making decisions or being given an objective saying, if you do this, you get this. But we now do have some definitive examples, so of course we now know about choosing your team. Obviously that's always been a thing in the previous games, but it does seem like there's probably consequences for it now, whereas in the other games you could just hop from team to team, no problem. You could leave a team one season, go straight back to it, whereas now if you keep leaving manufacturers, it probably is going to annoy them a little bit by the looks of it, or, you know, being loyal to a manufacturer does help you get into another team easier. Then of course we know about the actual debut season now. You need to beat Yamanaka, then obviously that then puts you against Moreira. If you beat Moreira, you get straight to MotoGP. If you don't beat him, you go to Moto 2. If you fail to do the whole thing, you stay in Moto 3. So we've got some more examples now of the turning points, but the actual feature we already knew plenty about. The social interactions, of course, we did have a trailer beforehand that did show us the social media side of it. We saw Quartararo and Bagnaia on basically the game's fake version of Twitter saying some stuff about beating each other at Mugello, but we now know a little bit more in depth about it, because before we've basically just been told it was about how aggressive they are with you on track. If you annoy them, they're aggressive. If you don't, they're fine with you. But it actually seems like there is more consequences again. So it does seem a general theme here that we're learning about consequences. But if you annoy a team's riders, it makes it more difficult to go and sign for that team, for example. So again, that's something we just didn't know about before. So the social interactions section actually has a little bit more weight now, rather than just making sure they don't knock you off on the track. So of course there is this hierarchy feature as well. Again, this had been mentioned before about how you wanted to be the lead rider so that you could control the development, and how you could work your way up by beating the guys that are already up there, and how the manufacturer would come and bring you some upgrades. But now we know a bit more about how the teams are sort of integrated in that as well, so you actually properly work your way up the team. So for example, you sign for a Ducati team. It's like in real life how they have official Ducati contracts and Ducati can sort of move them around as they please. It seems to be a bit more like that in the game as well. If you start off at an independent Ducati team, you can work your way up to the factory one. Now probably onto the biggest feature that we found out today, and that is AI bike development. So obviously the AI teams can develop their bikes. It changes the running order from season to season. Now of course, previously the developments haven't made that much of a difference when you've applied them yourself, and as we know in the MotoGP game, it's more AI based than actual bike based, so it will remain to be seen how this plays out. But it does leave the potential for you to be fighting different riders each year. So one year you might be fighting the Yamahas, one year you might be fighting the Ducatis, one year you might be fighting the Hondas, depending on the hierarchy. Maybe you'll be fighting them all if they're all really close. So it will be interesting to see how the actual R&D system does work. But of course, that's completely new knowledge. We didn't know anything about that before today. But yeah, that seems to be pretty much everything we now know. So career mode getting a massive overhaul. So let me know, guys, what you think in the comments below. I will, of course, leave a link in the description to this webpage, obviously on the MotoGP 23 game website, so that you can go read through this yourself. Although obviously I've read through everything, but you can go have a look yourself. I've already mentioned the Q&As a few times in this video as well, so if you haven't seen those videos, those will also be linked below, that you can go check them out so you can learn everything we do know. Although to be fair, at least on the career mode side, this is the most we've ever known. It's probably more than we've known from those, but if you're interested in other elements of the game, they probably will have been answered in the Q&A, so go and check those ones out. I've done some analysis of everything that Milestone said there. But if you are new to the channel, please do like the video and subscribe, because I'll be bringing you plenty of MotoGP 23 game content when the game does release next week, actually, which is quite exciting. It's finally coming. Obviously, we've had to wait a little bit longer this year, but it does seem like it is worth the wait. But I hope you did enjoy the video. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you're all staying safe, and I shall see you in the next one.